Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today, the topic of discussion is the difference between fiction and non-fiction. All of the books we read can be sorted into two groups, fiction and non-fiction. What is the difference between fiction and non-fiction books? Fiction books are books that tell a story. Fiction books tell made up, make-believe stories that are not real. Fiction books are written to entertain. Forms of fiction. There are three main forms of fiction: novel, novella, and short story. Novel is long work of fiction, contains the basic elements of fiction, may contain subplots along with the main plot. What are subplots? They are independent related stories. Novella is shorter than a novel, but longer than a short story. A short story is a brief work of fiction. It contains basic elements of fiction: one main plot, one conflict. Most can be read in one sitting. Novels, novellas, and short stories. The opposite of fiction books are non-fiction books. They give you facts about something and are written to explain and give you information. If you are reading a story about making friends with a unicorn, it's a fiction. It is made up, make-believe story because there is no such animal. It is entertaining you. If you are reading about a cow that jumped over the moon, if you are reading about how a farmer milks a cow, it is giving you information. If you are reading about how and why a bee gathers nectar from a flower, these are the differences between fiction and non-fiction books. Fiction, make-believe stories, entertain you, and they are not real. Non-fiction, true information, facts, they explain things. Genres of fiction: mystery, horror, fantasy, science fiction, myths, fairy tales, legends, historical fiction. These all are genres of fiction. Mystery typically involves the investigation of a crime, most often one or more murders. Horror aims to frighten or disgust its readers. Fantasy stories use magic or supernatural as a primary plot element, theme, or setting. Science fiction, although difficult to define, generally refers to plausible futuristic stories ranging from the rigorous hard science fiction to social science fiction and space opera. Science fantasy occupies a middle ground between fantasy and science. Myths, a story based on tradition or legend, which has a deep symbolic meaning. A myth conveys a truth to those who tell it and hear it rather than necessarily recording a true event. Fairy tales. Fairy tale is a type of short story that typically features European folkloric fantasy. Characters such as dwarfs, elves, fairies, giants, gnomes, goblins, mermaids, trolls or witches, and usually magic or enchantments. Legends, a semi-true story which has been passed on from person to person and has important meaning or symbolism for the culture in which it originates. Historical fiction, a literary genre in which the plot takes place in a setting located in the past. Historical fiction can be an ambiguous term. Frequently, it is used as a synonym for describing the historical novel. However, the term can be applied to works in other narrative formats, such as those in performing and visual arts like theater, opera, cinema, television, comics, and graphic novels. Come to elements of fiction: the plot, setting, characters, point of view, and theme. What is nonfiction? Text that is true and based on real information, like newspapers, encyclopedias, textbooks, dictionaries, scholastic news, magazines, etc. Forms of nonfiction. Two broad categories of nonfiction are literary nonfiction and functional texts. First comes literary nonfiction. Literary nonfiction has elements of fiction. For example, it might use vivid descriptions, a dramatic writing style, or poetic language. Functional texts. They give instructions, show directions, explain rules, provide other information that helps you complete procedures, often use illustrations or graphics. Come to literary nonfiction. Autobiographies and memories, which tell the story of author's life. Biographies tell the story of someone's life from the perspective of another writer. Letters, written communications from person to person. Essays and articles, the brief works about a specific topic. Reviews. Reviews tell what is good and what is bad about a work of art or performance. Reports. They give information about a topic explored through research. Now come to functional texts. The recipes. They tell how to prepare food. Directions. They tell how to operate or assemble equipment. Schedules. They tell when events take place. Menus tell which foods are available and their cost. Brochures use pictures and text to advertise places or events. Maps are diagrams that show areas of land. Applications are written requests to an authority. Nonfiction books usually contain a table of contents, glossary, and index. Table of contents tells on what page number different topics in the book can be found. Example of table of contents. Glossary. A glossary contains keywords that are related to the topic and their definitions. Example of a glossary. Index. An index lists all the big ideas and keywords in the book and the page numbers where they are explored. Example of an index. Nonfiction texts also contain photographs, captions, labels, and charts or graphs. What is a photograph? A photograph is a real picture of something. It is taken with a camera. Here is the example. What is a caption? Words underneath a picture or photograph that explain what it is about. Example of a caption. This photograph shows a picture of a sea star. So this sentence is the caption. What is a label? A label tells what something is. Example of a label. So these shapes are labeled. What is a chart? What is a graph? Charts and graphs use pictures to give information. Example of a chart. And here is example of a graph. Come to tips for reading nonfiction. First, review the selection. What's in bold? What are the pictures about, etc. Then, clarify the organization. Is it chronological, sequential, etc.? Then, summarize the main idea. Separate facts from opinions. Evaluate what you read. Come up with your own opinions. Come to review questions. These review questions are your assignment. Thank you very much. This is all for today. Allah Hafiz.